Hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of Bible Q&A. Today we're discussing how do we learn from Jesus' compassion? Jesus Christ was known to be a compassionate figure. He hung out with the poor. He helped the needy. He prayed for his enemies in Luke chapter 23 verse 34. Not many people would be willing to do that. However, why was he so compassionate? What did he gain from it? And how can we build our own compassion to create a better world? To answer these questions, we're going to reflect on jail. Yes, jail. There are basically three models of punishment in human societies. Either you punish criminals harshly, with corporal punishment, excessive prison sentences, and societal rejection, as they do in the Middle East. You just leave them to rot in jail, like they do in the English settler colonies like America and Australia, or you try to rehabilitate them, giving them many of the freedoms they had before they committed the crime, as they do in many Scandinavian countries. Instinctively, many people prefer the first option. This guy hit me, so someone should hit him. This guy robbed me, so he has to pay. As early as kindergarten, we want those who hurt us to also get hurt. That's why the Pharisees were so insistent on punishing the adulterous woman in John chapter 8 verses 1 to 11. You can't just let her get away with it, man. However, when you think about it, how does that help you? If someone hits you, you aren't going to be healed as soon as the aggressor gets whipped. If someone steals a guitar from you, you might get the monetary value back, but you won't get back all those memories you had with it, nor will you forget the anguish that the theft caused. You don't actually gain anything from someone else's punishment. That's why Christians are advised to not retaliate against people who do them wrong, according to Romans chapter 12 verse 19. It's not just because God says vengeance is mine. It goes for people of all religions. Retaliation doesn't help you. It gives you a little bit of an adrenaline rush, but it doesn't actually bring healing. Healing is a thing of the mind. When Jesus was being tried, he said absolutely nothing. He was oppressed, and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. He is brought as a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before her shearers is dumb, so he opened not his mouth. Isaiah chapter 53 verse 7. When he was reviled, he reviled not again. When he suffered, he threatened not, but committed himself to him that judgeth righteously. 1 Peter chapter 2 verse 23. There was nothing he was going to say that was going to convince the Jewish authorities to free him. So what was the point of cursing them? He might as well try to bless the few people among them who might change their minds later on. So that's the first step. If you don't want to retaliate against your enemies, you've already overcome a huge obstacle to compassion. You will have no reason to withhold gifts from them, for example, because you don't hold any malice towards them. However, what actually gives you the urge to help them in the first place? What makes you not simply decide to ignore them? Well, let's look at the second model of punishment. Plain old boring jail. You aren't supposed to be abused, although prisoners are still maltreated in jails across the Anglosphere, but no one's looking to help you either. You eat, sleep, work for pennies, and shut up. That's it. Most of us in North America and Western Europe are pretty okay with it. I mean, prisoners are treated like human beings and not animals, but they are also far away from potential victims. Everyone's happy, even prisoners, once you show them how certain countries treat blasphemers of their religion. However, what does society gain from that? Because we have to pay to keep those jails running, and pay for the security that keeps criminals from escaping. Unlike other infrastructure, like roads and schools, jails don't help us go to work or help us get a job, so jails are actually a net loss to our economy when you think about it. Similarly, if Jesus looked down on everybody and didn't bother trying to help anyone, he would have wasted 30 years on earth doing nothing. That is time lost that he could have spent doing something else. Instead, Jesus wanted to profit from his time here. He wanted to convince people to serve him. As it was said in Luke, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he hath anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He hath sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captives, and recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty them that are bruised, to preach the acceptable year of the Lord." Luke chapter 4 verses 18 to 19. That was the only way he could gain from his time on earth, since spirits obviously have no need for money. Similarly, God didn't abandon humanity because of the Christians who might want to serve him, according to Psalms chapter 130 verses 3 to 4. That's how we should see people who hurt us. If we just cut off a loved one from our lives because they hurt us, we have lost all those past and potential memories. All the time we spent with them was theoretically wasted. However, if we try to reconcile with them, then not only do we not waste all those memories, but our relationship with them is stronger, because they now recognize the value we hold in their life and they are less likely to do something like that again. In fact, the same goes for people we don't even know. Beloved, if God so loved us, we ought also to love one another. 1 John 4, verse 11. I therefore, the prisoner of the Lord, beseech you that ye walk worthy of the vocation wherewith ye are called, with all lowliness and meekness, with long suffering, forbearing one another in love. Ephesians 4, verses 1-2. Every single person in need that you don't help, every single person who's made the wrong choices in life that you don't help, is a missed opportunity to get help when you're in need. Okay, great. We don't want to hurt our enemies, and we're actually feeling good about not abandoning them to the wilderness. We might want to help them. Gosh, this feels amazing. But how do we actually do that? It's time to look at the third form of quote-unquote punishment. I put punishment in quotes because it isn't really punishment at all. It's rehabilitation, as is practiced in various indigenous societies and in Scandinavia. They believe that the point of jail and jail-like institutions isn't to punish criminals. It's to reform them, to create better citizens who will contribute even more to society than they did before they committed crimes. They do this by creating opportunities for dialogue between the victim and the perpetrator. They do this by giving prisoners the skills they need to re-enter the workforce. They do this by helping mentally ill prisoners receive treatment for their conditions. This process was so successful in the Netherlands that the government actually started closing jails because there weren't enough prisoners to fill them. What these countries realize is that criminals aren't actually evil. They just don't know any better. Individuals who commit financial crimes don't have the tools to build their wealth otherwise. Those who assault others are dealing with mental illness without the proper outlets to address it. Very, very few people commit crimes just for the fun of it. Thus, if prisoners are given financial education and they receive therapy, they are far less likely to commit crimes in the future because they have alternative solutions to their problems. This was what Jesus' entire ministry was based on. He knew why certain people were greedy and selfish and hurtful because they didn't know any better. As it was said in 2 Timothy, "And the servant of the Lord must not strive, but be gentle unto all men, apt to teach, patient, in meekness instructing those that oppose themselves, if God peradventure will give them repentance to the acknowledging of the truth, and that they may recover themselves out of the snare of the devil, who are taken captive by him at his will." 2 Timothy 2, verses 24-26. Thus he preached, fed people, and answered questions from those who asked, including the Pharisees at times. He gave Judeans the tools to make better choices. Only once did Jesus ever use violence as a tool of justice, in John 2, verses 13-17, when he drove out the money changers from the temple with a whip. And only after 3 years of trying rehabilitation did he finally rail into the scribes and Pharisees in Matthew 23, because nothing worked with them. Okay, I've been talking a lot, but there is one more thing I want to mention. There are a lot of people who feel that this last method doesn't actually work. They think it's too woke or too lenient, and that it doesn't actually help reduce crime. They think that supporters of this method simply sympathize with criminals and don't actually want to correct them. Some might think that Jesus actually supports the first method. But what these people don't understand is that you can be gentle with someone and still want them to change. Reaching out to prisoners is not accepting that what they've done is right. You are simply treating them as human beings, as brothers, according to 2 Thessalonians 3, verses 14-15. Because ultimately, that's the only way you can actually change someone's life. If you don't reach out, all the sentencing in the world means nothing. It will just make the other person angrier. Only when you connect with someone, as a fellow human being, can you even think about trying to correct them. So do that. Talk to them, for goodness sake. That is how to be compassionate to your so-called enemies. Don't retaliate when people wrong you. Forgive them. Don't be hasty to cut them off. Keep them in your life if possible. Actions like these are instinctual, but they don't actually help you in the end. Most importantly, though, try to rehabilitate those who've wronged you. You never know how you might benefit in the end. And that is where I'm going to stop with this Bible Q&A. How do we learn from Jesus' compassion? If someone has wronged us, we should reach out and try to help them understand what they did wrong and what they can do to heal the relationship, just like Jesus did 2,000 years ago. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe.